Hello, I hope you all are doing well. Today I'm going to be doing the last session of our book study. So we'll just go ahead and begin. I'm going to share my screen and pull up my PowerPoint, and we will just begin that way. Now, the first two sessions we've gone over lessons 1 through 8. This session is going to focus on lessons 9 through 12. And again, they are set up mostly the same way. I will include the text that they suggest to go along with the lessons. And you're going to be familiar with some of the strategies because we currently use them in our classrooms. But again, it's just a different way that we can present these strategies and these skills. So let me get this pulled up. And I just went over that slide. So we're going to go straight on into lesson 9. And this lesson is on comparing and contrasting. And that is something that we do a lot in second grade. In fact, our last story that we tested on was Dex, the Heart of a Hero, and that skill was specifically for comparing and contrasting the characters in that story. So, we're very familiar with comparing and contrasting, but this lesson has it set up a little bit different, and I just wanted to share this with you all. So, for this specific lesson, it's going to be broken down into 2 days, and I will explain that again. Oh, and I'll go ahead and explain the goals to you. So in this lesson, students will learn that comparing reveals both similarities and differences within whatever they're comparing and contrasting, and students will understand the terms compare and contrast. We try to nail that in their heads in second grade. I know they do it in first grade as well, but we try really hard so that anytime we ask them about comparing and contrasting, they know the difference. Okay, so I'll share the book with you again. And the assessment that the author suggests using is learn how to use a Venn diagram, which is perfect for comparing and contrasting. We've used this graphic organizer before, but it's just set up in a different way to present it. And I thought this lesson would apply to second grade in so many ways. Again, it includes text matters, it includes the supplies and resources, it includes the why and what and the little how-to on the side. And for this specific lesson, they're wanting you to use the book Frog or Toad, How Do You Know by Melissa Stewart. And again, it just explains what's in the back of the book, and I'll go into detail about that in a little bit. And this is how they want you to set it up. Now, it recommends 2 days. I wrote it out as 1 because I feel like you could do this lesson in one setting. So, during the connect and engage, it's going to want you to compare different things. Like you might compare 2 different animals or 2 different books or 2 different, I would say 2 different, I always can mainly do animals, and like I even compare maybe like superheroes, something like that, something that's going to get them excited about the topic. And you can also show a video on this if you would like. And once you pick the 2 things that you're going to compare, you start talking about that. Once you have talked about comparing the 2 things that you picked, then you would pair up the students. You would group the students by their eye colors. So if, all students that have blue eyes would go in one group, all the students that have brown/hazel eyes would go in one group. And then if you have any students with green eyes, they would go in a different group. So you're just going to group them by their eye collars, and this will invite them to be able to start comparing within their group. And then it says that you can give your students mirrors to compare their eye colors. So the person that's in the brown hazel eyes group can compare their eyes to someone that's in the blue eye group. Just something like that, so they're really engaged and interested in what you're going to be learning, and that's also going to help activate that prior knowledge. Once you have connected and engaged with them, you can also model this. Now, the past couple of lessons, it has combined the model and guide, but for this specific lesson, it wants you to model it first, guide the students through it before they start doing something on their own. So when you go to model something, you're going to model by picking two things that can be compared. And with this, you're going to pull up a Venn diagram or draw one on your board, however way that you want to do it. And with this, you're going to just explain what a Venn diagram is, show what it looks like, and what you put in each part of the Venn diagram. Once you do that, then you can do this read aloud, which was Frog or Toad. How do you know? You can use that book as you read aloud and stop and pause throughout the book and ask questions like you normally would do, and then you can compare what's in the book, and you can use the Venn diagram to model how you put things in a Venn diagram. After you have modeled what a Venn diagram is and what it looks like, it wants you to guide your students and help them, like you would read another short story, and you want to guide them to record important details about characters so that they'll be able to do a compare and contrast. That way they'll be able to do a Venn diagram to compare and contrast. So you might pick a short story, or in our case, like I said, we were talking about Dex, the Heart of a Hero. You could use Dex and Clevis in this case because they are two characters that can be compared, and for sure. And while you're reading this is where you're going to have students to write down important details. So if I was going to use Dex and Clevis, I would write Dex is small, Clevis is big. Dex is nice, Clevis is mean. Dex exercises, Clevis is lazy. That type of thing. Just details so that at the end of it, they're going to be able to put these two characters on a Venn diagram and compare them. Once you've decided what story you're going to use and you've guided your students through it, they're going to move on and collaborate. They're going to collaborate by working in groups, and they are going to complete a Venn diagram on their own. So whatever story or topic that you want them to be able to compare and contrast, you're going to have them to read the story as a group. You're going to walk around to make sure that they're reading and staying on task, and then you can give them a poster board or a large piece of paper and let them create that Venn diagram together. And they can take turns. Maybe you can let them use different markers, something like that, just to get them interested in completing the Venn diagram. Once they have finished that, you can let them share the learning. So they can bring up their Venn diagram either in front of the classroom or form a circle, and they can take the time to share it maybe in the afternoon if you're not busy doing something. And again, as teachers, we have to reflect and assess. And if you just want a quick assessment, you could use that large Venn diagram. You're going to be able to determine real quick whether students have understood the skill or not. And I feel like a Venn diagram really does allow teachers to see whether students are really comprehending what they're reading and they're comprehending what it means to compare and contrast. So let's move on to strategy 10. And with Strategy 10 is a lesson on inferring similar things. It's a one-day lesson. Students will learn what a biography is. Students will annotate the text in the margins of that story, and students will infer themes in biographies. So I feel like that's also a very important skill, because you want to be able to really have students to infer, because sometimes the author just doesn't come out and directly say what he or she's thinking. So it's important that students can infer, and too, sometimes the author doesn't necessarily will come out and say what happens at the end. They kind of have to guess based off what they have read what's going to happen. And this is especially important in a biography. I thought this would be perfect to use with our story, Helen Keller, because it is a biography on her life. Again, this is set up as it includes the text matters, it includes the resources and materials, the why and the what. The assessment for this lesson is that students will infer and recognize similar themes across text. So they're going to be able to compare and contrast text, which is important because that's what the last lesson was about. And they're going to be able to recognize that similar inference based off the two different stories. So again, I'm going to go ahead and tell you this. It's actually an article. It's Amelia Earhart, Courageous and Ahead of Her Time by Heather Anderson. So this is the text that the authors recommend using with this lesson plan. This is actually, I said it was one day, but really it needs to be 2 days just because it is kind of a bigger lesson. So I'll show you the book really quick, and we'll just break it up into 2 days. So the first day, of course, you're going to connect and engage. You're going to model, guide, collaborate, and share the learning with your students. So this is what the book recommends that you do. You should, in order to engage and connect with your students, you need to show some picture books of biographies and define a biography. So I would recommend that you pick out stories or biographies that are about people that your students would be familiar with. And one that comes to my mind is Jackie Robinson, where we read Luke Goes Back earlier throughout the year, and it's about sports, so your boys are really going to be engaged in something like that. You also might want to do a biography on like a president. I know that my students are obsessed learning about the president, so I just thought maybe you could find a biography based off one of the presidents. Okay, so once you have let your students look at these biographies and look at the photographs of them, you're going to define what a biography is. And I know Journeys does that in Helen Keller. It describes what a biography is. So we could use a term similar to that so that students would be able to understand this. This would actually be a great lesson to do while you teach Helen Keller. So once you've connected and engaged with them, you're going to model it, and you're going to do a read aloud, and you're going to annotate text with key themes. So whatever text you decide, depending on what subject you want to teach, you're going to want to really show your students and write down key themes, like what is the purpose of this story? Like why did the author write this? What do you think the theme's going to be about? And you'll probably have to give a definition on theme to make sure that your students are familiar with that. Okay, once you have modeled this, now you're going to guide it. And you're going to pick books that talk about 3 biographies, and kids choose which one to read. So on the guiding part, you lay out 3 different texts that are all biographies. You let them decide which one they want to read. And if you need to, you can talk to students to help them select the appropriate level um, of the book that they're going to choose. So this is a great way to throw in differentiation because you want to have books that are appropriate for all reading levels in your classroom. And if some of your students are not familiar with that, then you can kind of help them talk through to make sure they pick the correct level. Once they have picked the book that they're going to read, you're going to let them choose, or you're going to let them read it, and you're going to guide your students to restate themes. So once you have really talked about what themes are, how you can determine what they are, you're going to walk them through it and guide them as they are reading it on their own and make sure they're coming up with the correct themes. And something that you can do to share the learning, you can let them write down the themes from the books that they have read. You can create like an anchor chart, and then there can be, you can divide it into 3 sections and let them write or put a sticky note on each part of the anchor chart so that students can see the different themes throughout the 3 different books. So you can do that. If we want to do this as a day 2, this is what I would do. I would, on the second day that you're going to do this lesson, I would go in and guide them once again, and I would pick 3 different biographies. And again, they all need to be, it needs to be different reading levels to make sure, you know, you are differentiating the reading material for students so that they can all be successful and they all be able to comprehend. And after you have guided the same thing that you did the day before, just on a different day, this is where you're going to let them practice this on their own. So this isn't when they collaborate with their peers. They're actually going to complete this on their own. And what you would do is you'd hand out biographies and you would talk with your students as they read, and they are writing down the important parts to determine what the theme would be. So once you do that, you would, like I said, you'd let them write down what their themes is, and then you could share. You might say, who would like to share some themes they inferred from their biographies, and just let the students take turns deciding what they came up with for their themes. And you know, some students might be reading the same books and they interpret it differently. So that would be a great way for them to see different points of view on this and to see the overall big themes in each biography. And again, you want to reflect as a teacher, decide, do my students really understand this or not? And then if they haven't understood it, then you go back to the drawing board and you will group your students to help those struggling readers. Again, you can always ask Title I to help come in and with the lesson, or to do that small group instruction during that Title I time. Okay, let's move on to strategy 11. This is a lesson on analyzing a biography. So the previous lesson, they have to know what a biography is. And if they don't understand what a biography is, they're going to struggle with this lesson. So that's why it's really important that they understand what a biography is. So this is a one-day lesson, and the goals are students will understand the contributions individuals make, so whoever they're reading about, and students will read, talk, and write during an interactive read aloud. So let's lay this out. Again, set up the same way as all the other lessons, but I'll show you. Again, it includes the text matters, the resources and materials, the why and what, the how to, and the assessment is students will be able to surface big ideas while reading, listening, and talking. So during that read aloud, they're going to be listening to you, to the story, and to what other students are talking about. They're going to be reading along with you, and they're going to be talking about it. It's important that they are able to write down those thoughts. So the text that they recommend is Snowflake Bentley by Jacqueline Briggs Martin. Again, it's in the back of the book. Okay, so let's start out with section 1, connect and engage. You're going to share background information on biographies. So you're just going to explain what they are, why they're important, and you might say, we've been studying about what blank do, and then you're going to let them do a think, pair, share. So think about it, pair up with a partner, and then share it to the class. And then it says, what do you think we know about whatever your topic is, or who your topic is going to be about? So this would really relate to social studies, in my opinion. And once you connect and engage with them, you're going to model it. So you're going to introduce central questions and thinking, and you're going to do this on Post-it notes. So you're going to model exactly what you expect your students to be able to do. So you're going to explain what these central questions are, and then you're going to actually read Snowflake Bentley, and as you are reading it, you're going to talk about those central questions. So it would be like essential questions. And then as you are reading this story, you're going to model writing, stretching information, thinking on Post-its. I know Ms. Biggs came in not long ago trying to help us teach our students how to stretch information in those sentences, make those sentences bigger. You want to try to do that so that they'll have all the information they need to complete this activity. But you're going to, like I said, you're going to be the one modeling the writing, because, you know, second graders do struggle with writing. So it's very important that you are modeling exactly what you expect them to do, and you might have to do this several times. Once you have modeled how to do this, you're going to let the students do this. So you're going to continue reading this story aloud to them, but instead of you writing down your thoughts and ideas you're writing and what you're thinking about, you're going to turn that over to the students. So you're going to provide them with Post-it notes at their desk, and they're going to be writing down their own thoughts and stretching out that information as you are reading. And of course, you'll stop and pause and ask them questions to help them get that thinking process going. After after you've read your read aloud, you're going to start talking about big ideas about what was going on in that story. And you're going to make sure that the students know exactly what you're talking about. And then, so you might say this, I'll go over this. It says, so we've answered all of our questions, those questions that you talked about at the beginning of the story. There's a central questions or essential questions as well. You are going to make sure that they're able to answer those by the time you finish reading that read aloud. Next, they're going to do the practice independently. So you're going to tell them, now you're going to go off and do some writing in your notebooks. You can write about what you think is important about this story and what blank did. So whoever you are talking about in this lesson, you're going to write what they did that was important. What did they do? Why are they important? Why are people writing a biography on them? That type of thing. And in order for students to be successful at this, you're going to have to probably do a think aloud and really still at this point guide them to make sure they understand how to do it. And once you have done this, the students have had the opportunity to go back and write their own ideas. You're going to allow them to share the learning. So this means you're going to let students share their thoughts about the questions that they wrote down in their notebook. So they even write questions about the person in the biography. So once you tell them you're going to share, you're going to let them either form a circle, or they can stay at their seats, or they can go to the front of the classroom, and they're going to share what they are thinking after reading that specific biography. Once they complete this, you're going to reflect on the lesson, and you're going to assess them. You can assess them by their by what they came up with as they were reading and listening and talking about the specific person in the biography. Again, I feel like this is a really difficult lesson for second graders. I almost think it's really hard for third graders. So in my opinion, you're going to have to really break that down. I just think that is a lot for second graders. So let's move on to the last lesson in strategy. And this is a lesson on inferring to get the message. Again, this is something second graders really struggle with. So I thought this would be a great lesson to try to do in my classroom for next year. So again, the authors broke this lesson into one day. The goals for this is students will infer the meaning of words and phrases. Students will use the language and information in the text to surface big ideas. So surface big ideas, that is referring to the last lesson. These kind of go together. Okay, I'll show you the book. Okay, again, why the text matters. It includes the resources and materials, the why and the what, the how to, and the assessment for this particular lesson is that students will be able to draw and write to demonstrate deeper understanding. So this requires them to truly think about what they're doing. And if you think about it, this is the last comprehension strategy in the book. So they're going to take all the knowledge they learned from the past lessons to really be able to do this. The text that they recommend for this lesson is Martin's Big Words, The Life of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. by Doreen Rappaport. And it's by the Disney Book Group from 2007, but it's in the book as well. Okay, so again, you start out with connecting and engaging with your students. So you're going to build a background knowledge with a short video. So you're going to find a video on inferencing to help them get the message. And it actually provides a video too. So like if you go to look at this, it tells you the video that you need to pull up. It's actually called Video of Martin Luther King Jr. I Have a Dream Speech. You search online for MLK, I Have a Dream video, and it will pull up the exact video that you need. So I think it's awesome that you don't even have to worry about trying to find a video. It tells you specifically what to use. Okay, so that's what's going to get them engaged. Students love to watch short videos. They constantly want to watch something. I know, like, especially in math, when there's a math video at the beginning of each math chapter, they are begging me to watch the video. So, like, a short video like this is something that would really get their gears going, and they're really going to start thinking about what we're talking about because they're going to be so interested in it. Okay, so once you finish that, you're going to model. You're going to do a read aloud and show kids how to infer from text and illustrations, which can be very difficult for second graders. So you're going to have to go in really great detail on how to do this. And of course, you're going to use that Martin Luther King Jr. book that it recommends. And as you are continuing to model, you're also going to model recording and inference and labeling it with I for inference. So on paper, you're going to write a big I, and that is where you're going to write your inference. You got to make sure you know that your students know what an inference is and how to do that. It's not necessarily an easy task with second graders, but it's achievable. We just have to watch our wording and really, really, really model. Okay? So once you have modeled this, then you're going to guide them, and you're going to continue reading the text aloud, and you're going to stop at key points. And this is going to allow students the opportunities to write down their thoughts, the notes, and at this point, you can also let them share some ideas. So again, second graders are going to tell you, I don't know how to spell this word or anything like that, and that's okay. Just tell them to spell it the best they can. It's not for a grade. Just do the best. If you need to draw a picture to help you remember, go ahead and do that. Just any way to get them thinking about making an inference. Okay? And again, you're going to guide them through that so they really know what they're doing. After you have finished guiding the students, now they're either going to collaborate, working together, or working independently. You as the teacher decide what's best on what to do for this. Now, it says you can invite kids to choose a quote and respond in writing and drawing. So this means that you are going to, after you finish reading the book, you're going to, they're going to do writing and drawing on their own. Basically what they were doing with you for the guiding part, but they're going to actually do it either in groups or independently. It's your choice on how you would like to do that. And they've learned about think sheets at this point. If you choose to use all these lessons, then it says think sheets with important words from the story on them. So you're going to want kids to write down some parts of the story that really stood out to them, that was important to them. And they're going to write that on a think sheet. Of course, you can just write it on sticky notes. You can write it on a poster board. It's however you want to do it. But it is nice that this book provides you with exactly what you can have your students do. And it tells you exactly what classroom supplies and student supplies you need. I just think it's awesome how well set up it is. I can tell they've put a lot of thought into this book. So when they do their think sheet, they're going to write inferences and draw their own pictures on what those words that they wrote down mean. So they're going to illustrate their words. And then, it says that you can tell them, remember with that your pictures or images are great ways to show your thinking. So that's just going along with what I just said. It's one thing that they can write something down, but if they can actually draw and illustrate what their thoughts are, I think that really makes them think even more than just writing down words. After that, you're going to let them share their learning, and you're going to let students take the time to share their think sheets and show the class what they decided to write down from the book, as well as what their drawings look like. And they love to look at each other's drawings, so this is going to be something they're really excited about. Again, as a teacher, you have to reflect on the lesson and decide how it went, and you're also going to assess them. You can assess them through what the book recommended, which was those think sheets, or if you think you want to assess them another way, you can do that. But I think hands-on assessments are sometimes better because it takes that pressure away from students, because when it's paper and pencil, some students just feel that pressure. They feel this crazy amount of pressure that they have to be perfect and do great on it. And this will really help your struggling students, because they're not going to think of it as an actual test or an assignment. They're just going to think of it as fun and doing something they truly enjoy. Okay, so we can talk about the last section of the book, and I'm just going to talk about it very briefly, and we'll conclude this session. So again, every lesson they provide the book or text for you. So like lesson 1 with Stone Soup, they have the whole story of Stone Soup, which is really cool. Let's see if I can find one. See, the one I just talked about. And it even gives you paper that you can copy and paste to let them be able to write down their thoughts. Like that, what I just showed you was from lesson 5, those think sheets. So you don't even have to come up with your own think sheets. They provide it for you. And it almost looks like our writing journals that we use anyways. So I just think that's awesome. I talked about saving sea turtles in 2 lessons. Here it is with pictures for your students to see. I just think it's really neat, a neat book that really covers with what you want to do. And then let's see if I can find one. I know I talked about Martin Luther King Jr. So let me see if I can find it really quick. Where is it? Oh, it doesn't have it. So almost all of the books are, almost all of the lessons have it. From my understanding, when I read it, every single one of them did, but some of them don't have it, and that's okay, because you can look it up on YouTube if you don't have the book or anything like that, because most of the time if you go on YouTube, there are so many people that have already completed that as a read aloud, or you can purchase it. It's your choice. But I know it includes a lot of biographies. Like we talked about 3 different biographies. Here's Bessie Coleman. You can include that as one of them. In addition to Bessie, they have included Sally Ride. So that's another biography that they included. And I think they included one more, which would go great with the one lesson where you have to use 3 different biographies. And they did, and her name is Tammy Duckworth. So they have some similarities that you can take those things and kind of compare them with. So it includes almost every text for each lesson. It doesn't, I thought it included every single one. It turns out, like when I was looking, it looked, because it was so thick the last section, I just assumed, but they included a lot of biographies. And it also, and I forgot, it also includes like the Venn diagram. So it includes many of the supplies that you need for each lesson. And like I said, it includes pictures and charts for this. Now, we are officially finished with our 3rd session. We've covered this whole book. I hope I've gone into enough detail to help you all. Again, if we were in person, I'd be able to show you the book and you'd be able to see the pictures better. And hopefully this fall we can bring this book up and we can start discussing it together, and maybe taking some of those lessons from this book and actually making them our own for our own classrooms. So if you have any questions or comments about this last session, please message me. And again, the last 4 strategies: concentrate mainly on social studies, science, and reading, especially with the biographies. So the conclusion of this is that this book mostly focuses on strategies that can be incorporated in reading, science, social studies. But again, I'm sure if we wanted to, we could try to incorporate math in there. But also, not only does it talk about social studies and reading and science, it also discusses how you can include art, which is a content area as well. So you could also include that. You can include your art teacher, and you can also include Title I in this. I just think this book and these lessons are a great way for collaboration among our grade level, among other grade levels, and other teachers. So let's see, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I hope that you all learned a lot from this book, though, and I hope we can use it and that you found this to be a useful professional development. If you all have any questions, please message me. Again, thank you so much for listening. You have no idea how much I appreciate it. I will see you all later. Bye.